Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast, episode 33 of season number 2, and we've made it to the final week of the 2020 regular season. It's been a long road. Might not feel that long, but we're here, and it's, I think, a great thing. Yankees, of course, are officially in the playoffs, so we'll have playoff baseball to talk about. Of course, we got to get into Kyle Higashioka and the crazy run he's been on over the last week. We'll get into Deivi Garcia. Had a little bit of struggles in Boston on Sunday as the Yankees finally had their 10-game win streak snapped. They lost a couple in a row, but got right back on track on Tuesday. We'll get in that. Of course, we'll do our 3-up, 3-down from the past week. Our final 3-up, 3-down of the regular season, I believe. So this should be pretty interesting. We'll look at what to watch over the final 5 games of the season, 2 more with Toronto, and then a 3-game series with the Marlins, who could maybe clinch at Yankee Stadium. That'd be pretty cool. Luke Voigt's MVP candidacy, we'll get into that. And would splitting votes with DJ LeMahieu actually hurt his chances? And, of course, our final thoughts, including Aroldis Chapman's appeal, apparently won't be till next year. So the Yankees dodge a bullet, at least on that one. We'll get into the final week of the Major League Baseball season. We'll also give you a look ahead to the postseason. Right now, we tentatively have a plan in place to do a preview for you guys for the AL wild card, regardless of who the Yankees play. We'll try to preview that with a podcast on Monday. We hope to get it up Monday night, Tuesday morning, so you can listen to it before the AL Wildcard Best of 3 begins. Want to remind you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please give us a rating. We hope it's 5 stars, but I want to hear from you. What do you like? What do you don't like? Please send us an email, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. You can email me directly. And we'll get into how you can purchase a Dugout membership program later on in the show. So back with me this week is my distinguished panel of co-hosts. James O'Connell's back. James, how you doing?
Fantastic, Ricky. Would have loved Matthew Wolff to hold on in the U.S. Open. That would have been a great pick. But other than that, pretty good.
It saved me the editing because I would have had to find that clip and put it in the show. But It was close. You've been better at predictions this year than me. Although I did go 14-2 in straight-up NFL picks this week. So I'll take that. And also joining me this week is, of course, our great social media person here at Pinstripe Prospects, Alexis Farinacci. Alexis, how you doing?
Doing well. We get to talk playoff baseball. A couple weeks ago, we didn't know if we would be talking playoff baseball for the Yankees. But they picked it up, and it's been a good little streak they've had. So we get to talk playoffs. And while we're at it, you brought up the fact that the Marlins could potentially clinch a playoff spot while at Yankee Stadium. That would be a little bizarre for Derek Jeter, I would think.
Yeah, they're not making it easy on themselves. I mean, they've got a really tough road trip in Atlanta, then in New York. That's not going to be easy. I can look at the NL wild card in a little bit. I know Milwaukee and Cincinnati are basically in a dead tie with, I think Milwaukee has a 5-game series with the Cardinals coming up. So we'll get that a little bit later, but I think that's really compelling. And the Phillies bullpen is terrible. Like I told you all at the beginning of the season. So all of our picks are fighting to stay alive as possible for an NL wildcard spot. But let's get into the Yankees. And, of course, I think we have to start this week's podcast with Kyle Higashioka. Of course, he hit the 3-home-run game on Wednesday against the Blue Jays, then goes to Buffalo. And I guess somewhat does it again, 2 for 4, couple RBIs in this ball game. Right now it appears he's the guy for Gerrit Cole in Game 1 next week. It's amazing, I think, how far Higashioka is. Not only his defense has come, but his bat. And all of a sudden, Alexis, Higashioka is a guy that the Yankees are going to trust behind the plate in a big series. Maybe, as I've heard a lot of people say it, the 11 years ago version of A.J. Burnett and Jose Molina for Gerrit Cole.
Yeah, I've really liked Higashioka behind the plate. I think he's done well. And his bat has, like you said, has really picked up in these past couple games, getting a couple really big hits, including, again tonight, to give the Yankees that 10-1 lead over the Blue Jays. Just really starting to pick it up when he needs to. And I think him and Gerrit Cole are on a good rhythm together the past couple games, as they've been 2 of Gerrit Cole's best games as a Yankee so far. So I like it. I think that's what we'll see.
You look at Gerrit Cole's line on the night on Tuesday. He went 7 innings, 1 run, 5 hits, struck out 7, didn't walk anybody, 108 pitches, 77 strikes, ends his Yankee season, his first Yankee season, with a 2.84 ERA. I don't think you can ask for much better, especially in a shortened campaign. But James, you look at Higashioka, this is a guy that a lot of Yankee people that follow the farm system are high on with his bat. And while he may not be the catcher of the future, he at least is a guy that you can trust at the plate at the bottom of the lineup with the way he's hitting right now.
Yeah, and honestly, thankfully, Gary Sanchez is kind of putting it together a little bit of late because there'd be a lot more calls for Higashioka to take over as the starting catcher. And I don't really think anyone wanted to hear that noise. But Higashioka's looked fantastic, man. He's hitting phenomenal, obviously. Showed that power off again tonight. Hit one out. There's not much more you can ask for out of your backup catcher. And here he is now as Gerrit Cole's personal catcher. So if there was any doubt about Kyle Higashioka's future here with the Yankees, it's somewhat secure over the next couple of seasons being Gerrit Cole's personal catcher.
Well, I think we kind of erased the calls for Gary Sanchez because the calls for Gary Sanchez to get benched kind of get erased when Higashioka is going to be a game one starter. That's a big deal that the Yankees wouldn't just say, you know what, Gary Sanchez is the guy at the plate that we need, and you would get that kind of thing. It's kind of a big deal that the guy the Yankees believe is the catcher for them for the long period of time isn't going to catch game one of a best of three in a way.
And that's an interesting discussion to have because it's really going to hurt Gary Sanchez if he's not going to be able to catch Gerrit Cole. Obviously, I don't really think it has to be stated, but it's just going to have such an effect on where he stands with this team. Cashman said we're pretty sure a couple of weeks ago we're going with Gary Sanchez. He's the best option unequivocally. But now here we are with Kyle Higashioka being the personal catcher for the starting pitcher you just paid $320 million. Not the greatest look. So you're right. You're going into game one without Gary Sanchez in a best of three series. I think that's pretty much been accepted by the Yankees, by Aaron Boone. So it opens up a lot more discussions for Gary Sanchez.
Now, Giancarlo Stanton would probably be the DH if he's healthy in that game. Stanton got the day off on Tuesday as the Yankees continue to get him on the right track for the playoffs, but he has been hitting the ball pretty well. But I think Alexis Sanchez could be that secret weapon for the Yankees. He can come off the bench. We've seen him do that with that pinch hit grand slam against the Mets earlier this year. I mean, this is a guy that, at least you know, is probably going to be the best bench player for both teams in game one, regardless of who the Yankees play. So that's kind of a spot that Aaron Boone can kind of pick and choose when he brings in his power hitter for.
Yeah, I think we've seen Gary Sanchez do well off the bench here this season. As of late, with that really rocky start he had, but I think he's hungry for it. I think he knows, especially with Higashioka now catching Cole. I think that says something for Sanchez. I think he knows that he hasn't performed the way he needs to, and I think there's going to be a fire under him during playoffs to really perform and be there for his team because I don't think he feels like he has been for the majority of this season, and I think playoffs are going to spark something for him.
Something about, and Gary Sanchez is one of those guys who needs a big playoffs because, of course, I think he was under the microscope last year for just a bad ALCS against the Astros. And that microscope's only going to get bigger for him. But maybe it also changes that Sanchez is expected to do less on this team when you have guys like Judge back and hitting the ball well with 3 hits on Tuesday. Hicks with 2 hits and 3 RBI, including a triple today. Gleyber Torres is back. Clint Frazier's doing what he's doing. Gary Sanchez is now kind of like that 7th guy in the lineup in a way. So maybe some of the pressure gets taken off him now that Stanton and Judge are back, and they're going to get the pressure on them to contribute in October.
Yeah, Gary needs a big October more than anyone on this team. More so than Gerrit Cole, more so than really anyone on this entire roster. Just to silence the critics here, if you remember during that 2017 run, he had some huge hits, man. That home run in Cleveland in Game 2, granted they lost that game. The double into right center field against Houston in Game 5. You need Gary Sanchez contributing at the plate. I know he's not expected to, or really, at this point he's not expected to do as much as he was when in 2016, 2017, even 2018. But I don't know. You need him hitting. If you don't have Gary hitting, it's going to be bad for him. It's going to be bad for this team because that's a bat that you thought you were going to have to rely on, but now you don't. So I don't know, it puts Gary in a really weird spot.
This is a really interesting question I just thought of, but you look at Gerrit Cole and how the way he's finished the regular season at 94 strikeouts. I forget we had the over-under on the season preview. It was pretty close to that. They got like 90, I think, right? but
I don't remember.
something like 90, 95.
I think our over-under was 100 on Cole.
Yeah. So what you would have hit the under. But you look at Cole, I mean, we can't really file the report card yet because the playoffs haven't happened and Gerrit Cole's contract basically mandates that you have to judge him by the playoffs in a way. But how would you grade Gerrit Cole's first year in pinstripes?
I'm gonna go with just solely off his performance or with expectations involved and everything like that.
You're the grader. You're the report card.
I'm gonna give it a B plus. I think I'm gonna give it a B plus. I'm not gonna give it an A because granted he had his struggles in a sense. He was giving up a lot of home runs, but and sure he had a 2.84 ERA. Ultimately had a great statistical season, but I'm gonna go with a B plus. And I think it's just because of those early season struggles against the Orioles. He gave up some runs, got smacked around a little bit. But overall, dealing with the first season in New York, obviously this is a different first season in New York with no fans there to heckle you because God only knows what would have happened had Gerrit Cole given up 7 runs against the Orioles in front of fans at Yankee Stadium. They'd boo him right off the mound. That's just a ritual. So granted, it's a different first season in New York, but overall, B plus had a phenomenal season.
Alexis, how would you grade Gerrit Cole?
I'm gonna go an A minus. I can't give him a B. I gotta go an A minus. I don't think he had his perfect stuff early on there, like we were talking about. But I thought he's closed out the season very well, and I'm excited to see what he does when it comes to playoff time.
Gerrit Cole has made 5 starts this season against the Orioles and Blue Jays out of 12. So, and you look at his starts against Tampa Bay. I know one was a doubleheader. War's not great. He had the game in Atlanta, another good offense where he allowed a few home runs. So against most of the top offenses, he semi-struggled, albeit had good games against the Phillies and the Nationals. Washington has struggled. It's still a good lineup even without Juan Soto on opening night. I'm going to go with an A minus too. I just think it in a tough first year with the unprecedented times, as everyone likes to say. Cole, I think, did a good job, not only as a leader. I think one of the things we know from his press conferences, he always says the right thing. He doesn't really ever screw up. And even on the nights where he didn't have it, he at least found a way to keep you in the game to some degree outside of maybe 1 or 2 starts. And I think for an ace, that's really all you want. He didn't go out there and strike out 15 in a game. He did have a couple 10 strikeout games, had 3 on the year. So it's not like he didn't do that. I think you could change your grade in the playoffs for sure. And I think whoever the Yankees face in game 1, they're likely the favorite to win that game because of him. So I'm going to give him an A minus just because I think you judge on the curve of the 2020 season. It's hard to not give him a lot of credit for a sub-3 ERA year.
I see that. Yeah, I maybe I was a little harsh in the B plus, but all things considered, just a phenomenal season.
Let's turn to the other angle of the pitching spectrum, and let's talk about Deivi Garcia a little bit, who we talked about last week and the last couple weeks as kind of the quote-unquote savior of the Yankees season, if you will. Struggled mightily, though, on Sunday against the Boston Red Sox. Really the first struggles he's had in his major league career, going up against a good, talented young pitcher in Tanner Houck, who was very impressive against the Yankees. Garcia only went 3 innings, 6 runs, 8 hits, 2 strikeouts, 1 walk, 76 pitches, 53 strikes. No, Jack Curry mentioned he didn't really use his off-speed pitch that much. He tried to use it early, didn't have it, and then went away from it the entire day. So, Alexis, I'll start with you. Is Deivi Garcia's bad start a cause for concern for a Game 3? What do you make of the first rough patch that he's had at the big league level?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily a cause for concern for Game 3 based off what we've seen from him overall thus far this season. I think he needs to clean it up. I think you see maybe how he throws a bullpen session, if he throws a bullpen before that. But I still like Deivi for a Game 3, maybe Game 4 if needed.
James, what are you thinking about Garcia? Does this start give you a little bit of cause for picking him for a do-or-die Game 3?
I think regardless, how do you pitch phenomenal? How do you pitch the way he did? I think J-Hop was getting the ball Game 3 no matter what.
I don't see them going to a rookie in Game 3. I don't, especially with J Happ having a great season. Hate to bite my tongue on that, but he's down to a 3.2 ERA. You go with the experience, you go with the veteran. I'm all in on J Happ in Game 3, and that's saying a lot.
Wait a minute. I think you'll have to turn your volume up on your computer or your listening device. Did I just hear the words J Happ and great season out of James's mouth this year?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't. Okay, yeah. I'll eat shit on this one. Sorry. J Happ has had a great season. He turned it around. He's looked phenomenal. He's pitching angry, and you like to see that. You like to see someone pitching with someone to prove. You want someone with a chip on their shoulder in the biggest situation possible. That's the way I've always felt. And albeit it is J Happ, we know how I feel about J Happ. I still do think he will get absolutely tattooed in the postseason. I don't really think anything different. I still have no expectations there, but sample size, experience, everything in between, it's J Happ for Game 3 no matter what.
See, all I've always said when we talked about this earlier in the year was let's give J Happ a shot on a regular turn, not 12, 13 days off in between starts, because any pitcher is going to look like garbage almost with 2 weeks off. And every time now that Happ's been on a regular turn, he puts up quality outings. I mean, yes, it's the Red Sox, but on Saturday night, 8 innings, 4 hits, struck out 9, didn't walk anybody, and threw 113 pitches.
Granted, his FIP, field independent pitching, for those of you at home that don't know, is a 4.36. It's a whole run higher than his ERA, which is indicating he's getting somewhat lucky in some senses, but you can't argue with the results of the 3.25 ERA. You can't. There's just nothing to be argued there. You have to go with the experience. Deivi, I'm not that big, regardless of how he's looked. I'm not really that big of a fan of him in general. Something about him on the mound. I don't want to say it rubs me the wrong way, but I don't know. It makes me feel very uneasy. He's on the mound with that kind of low 90s fastball, and it just, I don't know. I know J Happ obviously has a low 90s fastball, but I don't know. Something about Deivi doesn't sit right with me, especially in a do or die game.
I will say this for Garcia. I think his next start, which I believe is Friday against the Marlins, could change a lot of things. And the reason I say that is I think now we want to see, can Deivi Garcia bounce back after his first rough game? If he goes back out there, he doesn't have to dominate, but if he goes out there and puts up a really good stat line, that could tell you even more about him, that he's just could easily bounce back after a tough game. And that could also tip the tide in his favor to maybe get the ball in Game 3 too. Now, if Happ puts up a good performance Thursday against the Blue Jays, that may be a moot point. But I think we could find out a lot about Garcia Friday, and maybe even he's going to be on this playoff roster. It's just a matter of, I think, how the Yankees use him. Do they use him as a Game 3 starter, or do they use him as a pitcher that can come in quickly out of the bullpen and maybe be that Mike Mussina role of the past, if you will?
I do think he can at some point be a Game 4 starter in this postseason. Granted, the situation would have to be you don't have to go to Gerrit Cole on short rest. Obviously, a lot of things would have to play into it, but I can see him starting at Game 4 if need come to be. I cannot see them going to a rookie, completely inexperienced, 21 years old in a do or die game. I cannot see them doing it. I think they'd go to Happ very quickly.
Would you, I'll throw this out to both of you since there's no Game 4 in a wild card series. What's his role then in the wild card round?
His role, he's going to piggyback off. I think he would probably be the guy to piggyback off J Happ. And if everyone remembers the 2017 wild card game, Luis Severino getting lit up like a Christmas tree, Game 1 in the first inning. He went to Joe Girardi goes to Chad Green. I think Deivi's that guy in this situation where, if something happens in the first inning, the first couple innings, they go to Deivi. That's where I see him.
Alexis, what about you? Where do you think Garcia fits in, and do you think Friday against Miami could change some things?
Yeah, I think you make a good point in seeing how he bounces back. If he has a good outing against Miami, I think he makes a case for being that Game 3 starter. I really think he's a toss-up. Between him and Happ, Happ, yes, has had a great, let's say, second half of the season. But so has Deivi. And I think Deivi's proved that he can pitch against the best. And I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't come in as a starter game 3, I think we see him as a reliever coming out of the bullpen for sure.
Which might necessarily not be a bad thing. I mean, you get that kid in a role where he doesn't really have to think about anything to start off with. That might be where you want him. I mean, while Happ has had his struggles, notably in at ALDS against the Red Sox, at very least he's pitched in this kind of game before as a starter. So there is something to that. I mean, do you prefer the unknown over the known? I think a lot of Yankee fans would tell you, yeah, I'd rather prefer the unknown than knowing that Happ might get lit up again. But I think you have to also look at Happ, and I was going to say this for 3-up, but I'll throw it out there now. In his month of September, he's got a 2.59 ERA, 28 strikeouts, 3 walks. Now, to James's point, the batting average is high for that kind of dominant stuff. It is 228. So that is high for a pitcher only giving up 7 earned runs over that time. But I guess that goes with the 3 home runs kind of factors into that.
Yeah, I think it's an indication of a little bit of luck, a little bit of good defense. I don't know. I don't like J Happ. That's well recorded.
Only the second time all year, by the way, in his last start that Happ didn't allow a home run in a game. The other one was August 29th in that 7 1/3 shutout innings against the Mets.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't love where the Yankees are at, no matter which way they go in a Game 3 scenario. That Game 3 scenario is a nightmare. But granted, if you're playing the Minnesota Twins, they're probably going to go with like Randy Dobnak. So at that point, you're just going to have to agree this is going to be an absolute slugfest.
I mean, they've got Homer Bailey, who just came back. They've got Rich Hill. The Twins have some, but
none of those guys oh my God, Homer Bailey. Oh my God.
No, they don't scare you.
Yeah.
But there's also proven veterans before.
Granted, it's J Happ versus J Happ. That's what we're going to be dealing with.
But as we'll talk about later, it's not necessarily assumed the Yankees will play the Twins. A certain team on the south side of Chicago making it a little bit tough on themselves for maybe even getting a top 3 seed. We'll get to that a little bit later. Want to remind you it's a new era over at Pinstripe Prospects as we provide exclusive minor league content to our paid subscribers with our Dugout membership program. You get scouting reports, player interviews, features, and much more in addition to our free Major League coverage and postseason coverage when we get there next week. Sign up today for our Dugout membership program for either $5.50 a month or $40 per year. And if you're on the fence about signing up, we want to give you 30 days free to try it out. So use the promo code #WelcomeBackBaseball. Again, you have to use the hashtag, but it's #WelcomeBackBaseball. You get your first 30 days free. There's a lot of cool interviews, a lot of cool things in there. We have Rob's had a great piece about the future of minor league baseball and what it relates to with the Yankees. So much going on in terms of instructional league news, potentially. Nothing new yet, according to our founder, Rob Pimpsner, on that. We know the Arizona Fall League is canceled this year, so that's a sad thing because we all know how prospects can make a big name for themselves in the Arizona Fall League. But we try to keep you up to date as best we can on the Yankees minor league system. And if you get our Dugout membership program, you get access to that. And I think it's highly valuable the way our staff can put great content together. Again, promo code #WelcomeBackBaseball. You get your first 30 days free. So it's time for everybody's favorite game of the week. It is 3 up, 3 down for the final time in the 2020 regular season. James, how about let's start positive because the Yankees have been on a good roll over the last week and a half. So 3 up for you this week.
Okay, so I'll start. Obviously, Kyle Higashioka. I don't know how you go anywhere else. Obviously, nothing else really needs to be said there. Guy's been hitting the hell out of the ball, catching very well for Gerrit Cole. Not much else has to be said. 2, Gary Sanchez. From September 11th to the 18th, Gary was slashing 296, 367, 741, adding up to an 1107 OPS with 3 homers. Granted, the last 2 games combined 0 for 7. But Gary has been putting together a lot better at-bats. A little bit optimistic on the Gary front, just the way he's been swinging the bat recently. So, Gary, you're up, my man. And 3 will go Gerrit Cole. Just continuing to be the pitcher we paid for here. Nothing else to it. Absolute dominance over the last however many games. Just ever since they made that switch with Higashioka, he's been a completely different. He's been the guy that we thought he'd be. So that's my 3-0.
Alexis?
I got to echo James and say Kyle Higashioka. I've always been a fan of his since he was in the minors, and I've really loved seeing what he's done in these past couple weeks. And then, again, Gerrit Cole just looked phenomenal his past 2 starts. And then for my third one, I got to go Luke Voit. He's staying so hot and so consistent, and I think really making that run for the MVP campaign.
All right, so we're all going to agree Kyle Higashioka gets number 1 no matter what. So I completely agree with you. Number 2, I know he's the focal point every week. DJ LeMahieu, last 7 games, 13 for 30, 4 doubles, 4 homers, 10 RBI. He had the game-winning hit in the 12th inning on Saturday against the Red Sox to keep the win streak going. In a game where the Yankees, quite frankly, had no business being in after being down 4-0. They just kept finding. I think that's an unsung moment of the win streak. The game, you could easily say, you know what, we've won 9 in a row. It's all right, we'll lose 1. No, they just say, let's keep going. So I'm going to give LeMahieu number 2. And number 3, you know what, I already mentioned him. J-Hap does it again. The guy right now, I think, is in a good frame of mind. Like James said, he's pitching angry. And sometimes a good thing when you pitch angry. Because I think he knows that he could pitch his way into more money from some team this winter. There's not really that huge pitching free agent outside of really, you would think, the 2 Yankee pitchers. In Paxton, who's coming off injury, and Tanaka. So J-Hap at least has a chance to make some money if he keeps pitching the way he's been pitching. So look at his start against Boston. And in a way, save the bullpen. And that's always a good thing going to that final week. You don't want to really use the bullpen up too much. So J-Hap, to me, gets a 3rd up for this week. There weren't many really other pitching candidates. I mean, Tanaka had a good start. 7 innings pitched, gave a couple earned runs. Mr. Consistent, but I'll put Hap there. How about 3 down? Yes, there were a couple losses, so we have to have some downs. Alexis, give me some 3 downs this week.
I think my 3 downs, just, man, I hate to do it to him. I know he hasn't really played much in this past week, but even when he has, Brett Gardner, still not incredibly impressed necessarily with what he has done within the past, fully this, even still being on the bench coming out. He's had a couple of good, decent hits. But got to go Gardner. My second one, unfortunately, I got to go Deivi. Just a really rocky start that the Yankees needed him to perform well in, and it just did not happen for him within that start that he had. My 3rd down, that's a hard one. Oh, man, I don't know that I have a 3rd down right now. I mean, everybody's pretty much performed well and kind of to how I would have expected. I mean, I think if you go anybody, maybe Tyler Wade. I think he's kind of had a roller coaster past couple weeks.
James?
Well, I'll start. Deivi obviously kind of pitched himself into the discussion here with J-Hap. Didn't look all that great, obviously. Number 2, Jordan Montgomery. Pitched himself out of any type of significant discussion with that start against the Red Sox, giving up, 4 runs over 4 2/3. Not great for Montgomery. You thought maybe that's a guy that could play a role in Game 4. He's been very bad this season. Not the furthest thing from impressive. And 3rd will go Jonathan Loaisiga, my guy. 4 runs in 1 inning against the Blue Jays. Not what you want to see out of a guy you think could be a important piece in that bullpen. I'm a big Loaisiga guy. Obviously, it's well documented, but he just since coming back from that injury, or whatever, I don't think it was even disclosed what he came back from, but not great from Jonathan Loaisiga.
Right, so my 3 down this week, I'm going to agree with both of you. Deivi Garcia has to be on this list. We hate to put him on this list, but he is on this list. Just by performance alone, we put anybody here, so he's there at number 1. I'm going to go number 2. I'm going to go with Mike King. I think the Yankees needed. I know it was maybe a lot to ask from him. Basically, it was a bullpen day on Monday. I know James, you threw Loaisiga in there. It's only fair. I think I put King there. I think the Yankees needed a lot more from him in that line on Monday. 2 2/3, 5 runs, 5 hits. Did strike out 6. Just kind of like the weirdest line. You give up 5 hits and give up 5 runs, yet you still struck out 6 guys and didn't allow a home run. Weird stat line, but Mike King, I think, has to be on that list. Number 3, I think I'm going to. I mean, I think you have to go Gardner with, like Alexis said. I think Gardner's kind of played himself into that bench role, if you will. Clint Frazier has done a fantastic job. 8 for 22 this past 7 days with 3 home runs, 7 RBIs coming into tonight's game. So Frazier's doing what he has to do. I don't really know. I mean, I think here's a good question to end the 3 up, 3 down segment on. Is Brett Gardner relegated to I mean, I guess he's your defensive replacement, but you could argue Mike Tauchman's a better defensive replacement than Brett Gardner in one of these games at this point.
I still think Gardner will be that defensive replacement. I don't think he'll ever lose that role. So, no, I don't think he has much to worry about on that front, but he's not going to see any at-bats, I don't think, unless Aaron Boone pulls what he did last year and starts batting him third for legitimately no reason. But I don't see him getting any meaningful at-bats in postseason.
You could throw out that scenario where Gardner comes in to play defense and then Tauchman pinch hits late. I mean, we all know the Yankees kind of like putting Mike Tauchman in those late inning situations where he just grinds out an at-bat and works a walk that sometimes ends up being the catalyst in a comeback.
Yep.
So I think that's what we could see. I think we see Gardner come out, like you said, come out in the field, but I don't know that you bring him in a pinch hit situation with the season he's had.
So let's take a look at these last 5 games, because the Yankees game on the Blue Jays against the Blue Jays this as we record on Tuesday is wrapped up or about to wrap up at 12-1 New York with the lead. So let's look at all right, there we go. So that they won that game. So let's take a look at what are we watching for in these last 5 games. We all know the division, while it's not officially Tampa's, is most likely going to be Tampa's. The Yankees are basically locked up at worst a 5 seed with the win today. They now add another game ahead of the Blue Jays. So is there anything that either of you are looking forward to over these final few games?
I mean, the only thing that you kind of have to look for here is, well, obviously you need to see Giancarlo Stanton and Judge get back into a rhythm. I think Judge had 3 hits tonight. He looked very good. But, that's really the only thing you're watching for. You're watching for no more injuries, of course. I'd always be alert with that because you know how quickly things can change. And the other thing is home field advantage. Will they get home field advantage against the Twins? I don't know. We'll see. I think that's the only thing to watch for here.
Yeah, will they get home field against either AL Central team? Would be really interesting in itself because I think Judge, I agree with.
Hold on. The Tigers are now taking the lead 3-2.
Wow. All right. So the Tigers trying to play some spoil horse. That's interesting. I'm going to go first next, and then Alexis, you can chime in. To me, I'm going to keep an eye on Gleyber Torres in a way, because I think we look at Stanton and we look at Judge, and obviously those are the guys that you take a look at. I want to see Gleyber Torres continue to hit. He's hitting well. Last 15 games hitting 304, 418 on base. So you're starting to see the Gleyber Torres that myself thought would be an AL MVP candidate, and then that didn't work. But maybe he could be the Yankees playoff MVP in a way, because if Stanton and Judge continue to hit, and Judge is hitting the ball much better. Stanton has been one of those guys that I think has fallen victim to hard contact, where he's putting the ball in play and hitting it well, it's just not falling anywhere. Stanton at least is starting to find it. Judge, to me, I think with his good game on Tuesdays right there, if Torres can just add to this offense even more, that makes it tough on whichever pitcher they're facing. And outside of maybe Lucas Giolito, in terms of the possible wild card candidates they could face, the Yankees aren't exactly going to see a lot of elite pitching in the first 3 games, so their offense should be able at least to carry them to a DS if they had to, and Torres could be a big reason why. Alexis, what do you think of the next 5? What are you looking for?
I think for me, I agree. I think we see what the offense does. I kind of got to disagree and say, if it ends up being the Twins we face, I think there's a lot of really good pitching. All
right, so let me throw this out there if you disagree. Is Barrios the best pitcher the Yankees could face in a wild card game, a wild card series?
I argue Barrios. Giolito facing him, but I really like Dobnak.
Okay. Again,
coming from that organization, but I really like Dobnak. I think he's got some really nasty stuff that when it's playing well.
I honestly think the Yankees would be licking their chops, as would the entire fan base, had they thrown out Randy Dobnak in Game 1. I don't know.
We'll see.
I think like I'm sure that's gonna bite me. Obviously, that's just how things work here. Like J Happ's all of a sudden a Cy Young candidate, but yeah, I think Barrios is the guy that would just I think concern me the most. I wouldn't be concerned either way had it be Barrios or Giolito, but I think Barrios has that wipeout stuff, that nasty slider away that could give the Yankees right-handers problems. It's I don't know. I think of all of them, the one I'd be the most concerned about would be Barrios.
So let's throw this out there then, Alexis. I'll let you continue the conversation. You're the Yankees. Who do you want more, Minnesota or Chicago?
Oh, that's a tough one right there. I think Chicago. I think you look at the Twins, it's going to be a battle of the bats. It's going to be back and forth between who can hit the most home runs, and then who can play that small ball. The Twins, they've looked phenomenal as far as the home runs have gone this year. So I think I want to see Chicago over the Twins.
To be honest, to me, it really depends on the series, where the series is, because I think you look at Minnesota. I mean, coming into tonight, they're 21-5 at home. And while you could say same old Twins, and last year I thought the Yankees would at least win it in 4 games, not sweep them. I mean, eventually the Twins are going to find it. I think you have a better shot at beating the Twins if the ghosts of Yankee Stadium haunt the empty stadium and they start to feel it even more. I think that would be in the cards. I'm still going to say Minnesota's the better opponent to face because I feel the White Sox have that mojo. And keep in mind, Dallas Keuchel just came back, and we all know the Yankees' history of hitting Dallas Keuchel. It's not very pretty. So regardless of the White Sox depth of the rotation after Giolito and not a lot of well-known big names in that rotation, you have a lineup that is just deep 1 to 9. They don't have to rely on the long ball sometimes like the Yankees do or sometimes like Minnesota does. They've got Anderson. They've got Jimenez. They've got Moncada. They've got – the list goes on and on. They're just deep. Luis Robert. I mean, the White Sox can beat you in many different ways with that lineup, and I think that would be a really tough test for this Yankee pitching staff to go up against a lineup that is, I won't say deeper than the Twins, but is more well-rounded than the Twins, a better phrase for it.
The White Sox are a classic case of a young team playing with like they have nothing to lose.
Like the 2017 Yankees.
Yeah, I don't like that. I want no part of that. The Twins, I think, are just mentally dominated by the Yankees. Just complete mental domination. They see those pinstripes, and that's just it. But they're both going to be very tough teams. Like let's not sugarcoat it here. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. Both these teams can hit. I think more likely than not, we're going to see the Twins, and I don't know if that's going to mean Yankee Stadium or not. And if you're a Yankee fan, obviously that the best case scenario is the Twins in Yankee Stadium. That is the best case scenario.
And the one thing I think you have to say, Minnesota's bullpen, we kind of saw it last year in the postseason. Their bullpen didn't lose them that series. I mean, their bullpen did a pretty good job. It's mostly the same names. Chicago's bullpen, I mean, the bullpen, you have the bullpen edge regardless of who you play, I think. I think you have the rotation edge possibly, at least the first 2 games, regardless of who you play. It's close. Honestly, I think the offenses are pretty much close to even in both hypothetical series. We could break this down more if we do another playoff show, but I think that's really how I would look at it very quickly. Offense is even, and then rotation and bullpen. I think you'd have to give New York the edge in both.
I'm you know what? I'm going to stick by this. Gerrit Cole game 1, Masahiro Tanaka game 2. Put them up against anyone, and I'm confident. That's really how Yankee fans have to feel. You put up those 2 guys in the postseason, pressure situations. There's no one else I'd rather have on the mound left than those 2 guys. That's just how I feel.
Well, James, I'll go to you on this. Alexis, did you want to chime in on that one? How would you look at this series? I think, would you agree offense is even, rotation, bullpen, Yankees favor, or do you think the other way?
I'd have to agree with it. I think, yeah, pitching wise we're even. batting, where even if not, the Yankees have the lead and the upper advantage on that, especially getting hot as of late. I really like what our offense is going to do.
I personally think in all aspects, the Yankees are a better team. In every single aspect, pitching, hitting, just every aspect, I think. Because we forget, I think everyone, granted, that's their fault for getting hurt every freaking game. We forget how good they are of an offense, like when they're fully healthy. And again, I don't think you can. It's with Tanaka and Cole, the top of that rotation. There's no way that's an equal split there. There's just no way.
So let's look at Luke Voit real quickly. Obviously, AL MVP wraps up this week in terms of you're filling out your resume, and Voit with 21 home runs on the season. We kind of got into it last week where Voit stands in the MVP race, but I kind of thought about this with the candidates in a nutshell. Like MLB Network was showing, and ESPN, I think it showed once or twice. So I'll throw this out there to you, James, first. Does splitting votes potentially with LeMahieu hurt any Yankees' chances of winning MVP?
I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, I don't think any of them are winning MVP regardless. I don't think they're going to give it to Luke Voit. But, yeah, that's kind of just how I feel about it.
I mean, to me, if I'm casting a vote and the IBWA, I do cast a vote, I would kind of lean Abreu. Yeah. Because I kind of think that he's kind of like that leader of the White Sox. And the guy's not only hitting homers, but he's hitting, I think, over 300. So he's been that player, I think, that just, I think, defines who Chicago is. And if you go by the intangibles, I think that's where he kind of makes sense more than Anderson for that regard. Anderson, we know, can hit for batting average. We've seen it. I feel like Abreu's kind of taken that next step that the White Sox have always looked for him to take.
Agreed. I think it's Jose Abreu. That's why I don't think LeMahieu taking votes from Voit is going to really have any impact. I don't think he's winning it anyway.
But that's a fun conversation to think about, Alexis, where LeMahieu, while missing a few games, hasn't really taken himself out of the MVP case in a way. I've seen him up there on a short list of candidates.
No, he hasn't taken himself out at all. You look at his batting average, and he's still just been absolutely phenomenal, even with that little bit of time that he did miss with injury. He's come right back and just been absolutely phenomenal this season with a 365 average, 420 OBP, with a 1.03 OPS or 032 OPS. Absolutely a candidate for MVP this year. Between him and Voit and the other great candidates in the AL we're looking at, LeMahieu is absolutely right there in that conversation, no doubt.
So let's take, before we look at the final week in terms of general Major League Baseball, anybody else have any thoughts on Aroldis Chapman's appeal getting pushed back to next year because baseball couldn't find enough witnesses to get on a Zoom call or something, or a phone call?
It's typical of 2020. That's all I have to be said about it.
Yep.
I like what I think Michael Kay says in his radio show. Like, what are those witnesses doing that you can't get them on a phone call in 2020?
I don't know.
Why are they not available? I mean, either way, I think from what I read, even if the appeal was this week, the 3 games would just carry in next year anyway. I don't think they would count toward playoff games.
Yeah.
So that would be at least one thing, but I don't know how you. I mean, what happens if something happens this postseason? Are you going to have the witnesses available then? I don't know. That was just weird in all things considering. But looking at the final week of the regular season, you have some really interesting races. We've talked about the White Sox and the Twins still battling for the Central, which I think not a lot of people thought a couple weeks ago the way the White Sox are playing, but they're right there. Technically, as we do the show, the second place in the West is still up for grabs in a sense. Houston's got a sizable lead at 3 games, but they still have a few more with Seattle. So the Mariners could make a run. Justin Verlander, of course, now will have Tommy John surgery. He's out for all of next year. I'll get into that a little bit later in final thoughts. AL's pretty much set in terms of playoff teams outside of the West. All the dramas of the National League, but here's the updated standings I got right now. Cardinals are your 5 seeds. They're second in the Central. Game over 500. They have 5 at Milwaukee this week. Reds and Brewers essentially are tied. Both different records, but both are 500. Giants are half game back. Phillies, who lost both games to Washington in a doubleheader on Tuesday, are 2 back in the loss column of the Brewers. The Rockies are 2 back in the loss column. The Mets are 3 games behind. So while the Mets I think it's too little too late for them, even though DeGrom struck out 14 the other night and still lost. Typical Mets. And the Marlins right now would be your 6th seed, and I think as long as they don't lose every game this week, I think they'll find a way to get in, but they're not making it easy on themselves. So, Alexis, I'll start with you. What's the main thing you're watching in general for baseball? The National League, I think, has all the drama left in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got some good races in the NL East, NL West. I think your ALs are all pretty much solidified. I think it's a very long shot for anybody else besides the Rays to take that. I think the National League is where we look in this last week of the season. Again, talk about, the Marlins could clinch at Yankee Stadium if they have a really good couple series here. So that could be interesting.
That's the one thing that sucks about 2020. A lot of things suck about 2020, but that Derek Jeter probably won't be able to be in person for his team to clinch at the ballpark where he was known to play well for 2 decades. That would have been like one of those like picturesque moments in a way that I think we'd get denied of.
I feel like he might still be there. Cashman went to a couple away games this year.
True, that's possible. The team I'm looking forward to, and before I get to you, James, I think this is a good opportunity for the Giants. Now, if Colorado does some damage here this week in their series in San Francisco, that could hurt. They do have 4 games with the Padres. And keep in mind, San Diego pretty much has nothing to play for. They're not going to win the West. The Dodgers are going to win the West. Atlanta right now is the edge on the 2 seed for the Cubs, which could be huge for different reasons. But if the Padres basically go in just setting their rotation for that wild card game or wild card series, the Giants could be in position to, dare I say, make the playoffs.
It's interesting. Well, I think we're here between the Giants and Phillies. That's the or on the Reds. There's a lot of interesting things going on here. So I think the last team that the National League wants to see in there is the Reds. Just for that starting pitching with Bauer and Sonny Gray. I haven't heard a lot about Luis Castillo this year. Is there a reason for that?
I know Castillo, I think, won on Monday. I think he beat Woodruff on Monday.
Well, I just pulled it up here. Hold on. He's got a 2.86 or 2.73. That's the one team that the National League does not want to see. It's the Reds. So,
but on the negative side for the Reds, if you have to go all out and pitch all your top guys this weekend against Minnesota to get in, it kind of limits what you could do in that wild card round.
And of course, but again, obviously is going to be the most important thing or the most thing at the top of the list for the Reds. Obviously, they went all in this offseason, everything in between. So that's going to help the Yankees out a lot if they go with those 3 top guns against the Twins. This is going to be a really interesting finish.
To me, I think the NL Manager of the Year could come down to this week because David Ross has a shot for the Cubs, but if the Marlins get in, you could give it to Mattingly. If the Giants get in, you could give it to Gabe Kapler, which is kind of weird. I think Philly fans are wondering what happened there.
Gabe Kapler bothers me. His voice is bothering me.
The Phillies got to play Tampa this week. I think just right now, and the Reds aren't looking much better for me, but the Phillies, that's a team that they would hurt anybody in the playoffs, but their bullpen is just garbage. It is so bad.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the reason they're losing games because Harper's having a great year. Didi's leading the team in batting average. Real Muto's had some injuries. They have had injuries, so that's kind of hurt them lately. Especially I think Segura got hurt too. But the Phillies are a team that you would be afraid of their lineup in any postseason series if they get there.
You bring up Deivi. I don't know why this triggered this in my brain, but actually I'll save it for my final thought. There's a team.
So let's play some final thoughts where we can talk about whatever we want because that's what final thoughts are. Alexis, I'll let you start off. What's your final thought for this week?
My final thought, it's been an exciting first 2 weeks in the NFL. I got to throw a little football plug in there. And then, we've got the battle of the mustache and the beard on Thursday night between Fitzpatrick and my man Gardner Minshew.
So that should be an exciting one at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville on Thursday night. And then playoffs are coming. It's an exciting time, kind of bittersweet. It feels like the season just started, a way it did like 66 days ago. And yet we're already at playoffs. So it should be an exciting playoff run, an exciting time for baseball fans around the nation.
Looking forward to that. By the way, that baseball schedule, I was looking at it. I think Sports Media Watch kind of had it. You would have on that Wednesday games on ABC, ESPN, and ESPN2 maybe around the same time. So you could get a chance to – they need like a mixed channel for that where you could watch all 3 games at once. I think that would be really cool if that happened. But that's the drama.
Throws you back to the Olympics. Baseball all day, every day kind of a thing going on.
There is sports going on everywhere. And that you don't know what channel you want to watch. I think that's just the fun part of it. James, what's your final thought for this week? I know you just teased it, so go ahead.
Triggered my brain a little bit. So we're talking about Didi, because if the Yankees let DJ Mayhew walk this offseason, because remember, he's a free agent, and this we saw exactly what this team looks like without him in the line. If the Yankees don't sign DJ LeMahieu this offseason it's going to be a disaster. This team is going to look entirely different. Do they try to pull a fast one and let DJ walk to bring Didi back in? I don't know. But all in all, they better re-sign DJ LeMahieu. That's my final thought.
By the way, interesting note, as Tim Healy from I think it was Newsday pointed out, the Mets are 3 back of the Marlins, and they have the tiebreaker. So the Mets are 3 back for that second place spot.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either, but, I mean, you do get DeGrom one more time. If they could – I mean, they get Washington this week, who I think is checked out of this, even though they won the doubleheader against the Phillies. I mean, what's Washington playing for in the year? I mean, it's possible, but I don't think it'll happen. My final thought's going to be about the 2 things. Number one, Jeff Passan from ESPN, I think, had this report first. It sounds like the MLB draft order for 2021 is going to be based solely on this season. I think it's the right way to go because even though I know the idea of combining the winning percentage of the 2 years kind of works, but it did kind of, if you wanted to tank this year, you could have did it and got the number 1 pick. I know Boston's going to probably have a top 5 pick. Washington, I think even in a bad year, is going to get a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick at the worst. Yankees right now are actually in the early 20s. I think they're like between 22 and 24. So a pretty high pick for them considering where they normally are. And that's a shot to at least add some top talent. I mean, Schmidt was around like a top 20 pick. So getting around a top 25 pick, never a bad thing in the draft if you can get it. So the Yankees might at least have a higher pick than normal coming up next July. My second thought revolves around Justin Verlander, who I mentioned is having Tommy John surgery, out for this year, out all of next year. And it comes to mind 2 things. Number one, I don't know if we're going to see Justin Verlander, A, pitch at elite level again, and B, I don't know what team is going to take a chance on him at age 39. I think a team will, but what's left for Justin Verlander after this, who has been one of the best big game pitchers of the last 20 years? I mean, it's a guy that you did not want to face ever on the mound. And number 2, where are the Houston Astros? Zach Greinke's getting older. I mean, Lance McCullers has had a good couple of starts, but they don't have that ace pitcher in the wings. Their offense hasn't looked great this year. A lot of guys have struggled. I know Altuve struggled a bit. They have had their injuries. Will Dusty Baker come back next year? Who knows? And probably not, I would think, because they want to get their own sabermetric mind in there. And you look around the American League, Yankees are still going to be there. Blue Jays are getting better. White Sox are up there. Cleveland's always Cleveland. Twins are still good. You got it. Oakland we're seeing is consistently good. You know the Angels, or dare I say even Seattle, are on the rise. Where's the Astros? They're one of the few teams in the American League going the opposite way. And regardless whether you look at 2017, whether you count that title or not, that's entirely up to you. Is it worth it for them? I guess. But you're looking at could be a really down time for Houston Astros baseball in the next few years because they burned a lot of their system to make trades to be contenders, and it doesn't look pretty for them. Plus, I think they still have to keep Springer, right? I think Springer's a free agent. So that's going to be a big thing for them, too.
The Astros are going right where they belong. After that whole scandal, they are where they belong, but they don't necessarily belong in postseason. I know they're going. It looks like they're going to get in, but this is not the Astros of old. This is not the team to get through here. I guess the Tampa Bay Rays in the American League, and for the foreseeable future, I think it's going to be the New York Yankees. It has to be. So say goodbye to those Astros of old, and let's welcome in a new era of the American League finally.
I will say props to Seattle for making this a race. I would have loved to seen Jarred Kelenic this week. I know Jerry DePost said it was not happening. But Seattle, at the very least, while they probably won't make it, well, who knows? I mean, they could play well against the Astros this week and make it interesting. But they're young guys, and former Yankee prospect Luis Torrens is there and playing pretty well with Seattle, hitting .283. There's some good things happening in the Northwest. So that's a good sign for the Mariners that Kyle Lewis could be the Rookie of the Year this year. I would love to see them at least go into that final week and put some pressure on the Astros. That's going to require them, I think, having to win at the very least 2 of these next 3. But they're at least making the Astros have to work for it, even though you're probably going to play for the right to lose to Oakland in round 1. Still, it'll be great for Seattle to get in, but it will not happen.
Yeah, and I think you said it too, Rick. I mean, your heart's got to go out to Justin Verlander. It's got to be tough for him at his age. I think you kind of start wondering, does he start questioning retirement at all? You said at 39 years old and having TJ surgery. Not the best of results coming out of that, most likely.
Well, he's going to be 39 once he can pitch again right now. So I think that's the big scenario to take a look at, because I don't blame Verlander for taking the time before deciding. A lot of people thought he was going to get the Tommy John surgery immediately. As we've seen with Tanaka, that's a big decision whether to have it or not. Tanaka never had it, and so far, luckily, he hasn't had to have it.
Which is crazy. Crazy. I cannot believe how they pulled that off with Tanaka.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big decision to make for a pitcher. We talk about the success stories of Tommy John, and there's a lot there, but there are guys who don't come back from that the same again. And I don't know if can Justin Verlander come back and reinvent himself? Yeah, of course he can. We've seen guys like CC Sabathia do it. Why can't a team that was on the cusp of making the playoffs 2 years from now bring in Justin Verlander as kind of that veteran in that clubhouse? And we saw what he did for the Astros. I mean, couldn't he maybe not be the ace of that staff this time around, but do that same kind of impact again? It's not out of the question. Get a young rotation, put Verlander in there.
Someone's going to take a shot on him.
You'd learn a lot. You get a young staff that would learn a ton from him if you did that.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, you could argue. I remember all the talk in the Astros was how much, at least with. I mean, Gerrit Cole learned a ton from him. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to do that. So hopefully, best wishes to Verlander. Hopefully, he has a successful surgery, can come back soon, because the game will miss him. I mean, that's a guy that I enjoy watching pitch, and to have one of the guys out for foreseeable future, never a good thing in the sport. So again, we want to remind you, we are working on, hopefully, we're not going to put it in pencil. We're not putting it in pen. We're going to try to be back here before the AL Wildcard Series begins on Tuesday. You will hear us most likely Tuesday night after Game 1 of the after the Wildcard Series. So I got to get out of the habit of saying ALDS because it's not ALDS yet. I'm not looking ahead, but I'm used to the first round being the ALDS. So Wildcard Series, Game 1 post-game will be Tuesday night. We'll record. You'll hear that late Tuesday, early Wednesday. And we're looking to record a preview of whoever the Yankees play at some point on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. So, James, how can they follow you on Twitter?
You can give me a follow at O'ConnellNY on Twitter.
And Alexis, how can they follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at Alexis Farinacci.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. It's at RACK, letter I, Nader like in Terminator, and 3 5s. And catch my show, Kicking with Keeler, on Full Press Radio. Got a good show for you this week. We're going to be joined by a couple of people this week. We're going to be joined by Kevin Ostreicher. I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong. But he is from Locked On Ravens, so he's going to play Week 3 Word Association with us and preview Chiefs Ravens. And I'm also going to be joined by Gerrit Cole from MLB Daily Dish, the MLB site and SB Nation. He's going to hop on. We're going to look ahead to the baseball playoffs. So That was your two guests for this week's show. You can catch my work on ESPN Personalities over at Barrett Sports Media. So follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Please give a like and subscribe to the podcast over on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Please give us a rating. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We want to hear from you. Feel free to email me as well, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. Be sure to sign up for our Dugout membership program. Again, it's $5.50 a month, $40 a year. Or if you're not sure and you want to give us a shot, use the promo code #WelcomeBackBaseball, and you get your first 30 days free. So that's a good time for the playoffs to get those 30 days free and give us a shot. We guarantee you won't regret making that decision. So from all of us here at Pinstripe Prospects, I'm Ricky Keeler saying enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the final week of the regular season in baseball. Stay safe. Please wear a mask. And the next time we talk to you, it'll be October time. We'll see you then for some Yankees postseason baseball.
Later.
Have a great night.